A human scientist risks everything to unlock a cell that burns like a furnace, and inside waits a Fire Griffin who refuses to be a weapon. The execution clock is ticking. The law is a maze. One shared meal becomes a vow. If freedom breaks, will the galaxy break with it? If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The first time Nora Hale pressed her hand to the thermoglass, she felt the steady breath of a world trying not to go out. Inside the containment vault, the Fire Griffin paced in slow arcs, heat smearing the air into trembling waves. The station labeled him Subject 77A, but the tag felt like a lock on a living song. Nora had already given him a name in her mind, Oral Flamecrest, for the gold at the edges of his ember feathers and the stubborn lift of his head. Jalen Frost stood a step behind her, boots set in that practiced guard stance that said he had carried too many hard nights. "Don't let it inside your heart," he murmured. "This place eats what it touches." "He shouldn't be here," Nora said, not moving, eyes tracing the curve of Oral's wings, tethered by a glittering field. "I read the file, and I read between the lines. He refused to fight." Jalen was quiet a moment. Then his reflection leaned into the glass beside hers. They wanted fire on command. He wanted to keep a soul. Refusing the first thing meant they invented the second thing. Now the story fits the paperwork. The numbers were terrible in their calmness. 732 standard days inside a box that baked him from his own radiance. The containment loop turned his warmth back on him, a gentle cruelty that never stopped. Nora's sister called each week from Earth, voice bright with worry. "Take a break, Nora. I'll cover your tickets to Titan's Water Gardens. Please." Nora would smile and promise to think about it, but the truth kept dragging her back to this glass. "What if I ask for research access?" Nora said, her tone too even to be casual. "Behavioral mapping, biothermal sampling. I can design a safe protocol." Jalen's laugh was soft and without joy. "Director Caldwin hasn't approved a deep study in years." "Then I'll pitch it in a way he can't refuse," she said. "Energy independence, climate control systems, survival kits for cold colonies." "I'll pretend I can copy his fire without copying his will." "You'd be lying," Jalen said. "I would," Nora answered, and now she turned from the glass, because she needed to breathe like he did. "And I will do it if it buys him time." When she stepped into Director Caldwin's office, she carried no tremor in her voice. The man was small and iron neat, the kind of person who straightened a pen and felt in control of the galaxy. He scanned her proposal, eyes flicking over headings that promised heat on demand and weaponless warmth. He skipped the compassion at the heart of it, because such things did not tally in his columns. "Ambitious," he said at last. "Dangerous. Costly. The Slate Hall in Cargo Wing 12 is modular and can be refitted fast," Nora replied. "High ceiling, thermal veils, monitored vents. If there is no measurable yield in 3 sessions, I will stand down." Caldwin placed the slate on the desk and steepled his fingers. "You have 3 sessions, 24 hours each, spread across 3 days. After that, Subject 77A resumes containment until termination." The word landed like a stone. "The last update said life imprisonment," Nora said, careful with her tone. "Budgets change," Caldwin replied, as if he discussed a corridor repaint. "Your clock starts on your next cycle. Deliver something I can present to the council, or walk away." Nora left with her jaw set and her path narrowed into a razor. Jalen waited in the corridor and saw her face before she spoke. "He gave me 3 days," she said. "Then we make them count," Jalen answered. "And at night, we look for doors hidden in the walls." They worked fast. The cargo hall transformed into a gentle shimmer of heat, not meant to punish. Technicians swore under their breath, and then, seeing Nora's focus, worked quicker. Nora specified a room that let a body breathe. She asked for a long table instead of a lab bench and ordered real food from the galley. Not paste, not tubes, but meat with herbs and fruit with scent. She added a small cake, even though she did not know if a fire griffin tasted sweet the way humans do. Before the first meeting, Nora stood alone in the refitted hall and told herself to stay simple. "Stay honest," she whispered, as if the room could hold the words and return them when fear arrived. When the doors yawned aside, Aurel stepped through with bound wings and a collar that hummed a warning. 4 guards came with him, weapons idle but ready. Aurel saw the space, then her, unarmed and still. He stopped as if the world had "Hello," she said. "My name is Nora. I want to help." Aurel's voice, when it came, was a careful thunder. "Here, help is a word people use when they mean control. Your Federation standard is strong," Nora said, taking one careful step. Files said otherwise. "Files prefer tidy fictions," he replied, easing down so his eyes could meet hers. "Why are you here, small human with shaking breath?" Nora blinked at being seen that plainly. "Because the world is big enough for both of us," she said. "Because I believe you deserve air that doesn't bite. And because today is my birthday, and I wanted to spend it doing something that means tomorrow." A sound moved through Aurel, a low rumble that lifted into something like a laugh. Tiny sparks danced harmlessly along his feather tips. Rifles rose. Nora lifted her hand toward the guards. "It's fine," she said. "It's joy remembering itself." She opened the containers, and air filled with rosemary and heat and something like home. Aurel's pupils widened. He bent, breathed in, and for a heartbeat, she saw shine gather at the corners of ancient eyes. "Thank you," he said, and the words warmed more than the room. The first session became not a study, but a shared table. Nora spoke of rivers and skies. Aurel spoke of dawn shoals in the Phoenix Vale, where his kind rode. Nora looked up, eyes fierce and bright. "This is the door," she said. "Then we run through it before anyone remembers to lock it," Jalen answered. And in the quiet, between one breath and the next, a plan took fire. The second session began with fewer guards. The weapons were still charged, but the air felt less like a threat and more like a test the room hoped the two of them would pass. Nora kept everything gentle. She wore a light thermal suit, not armor. She placed a bowl of water on the floor, even though a fire griffin rarely drank while heated. It was a sign of care as much as a practical thing. Aurel entered more slowly than before, scanning the arches overhead. The high ceiling promised space his wings could not yet claim. He settled onto his forelegs and angled his head, a question without words. "No machines today," Nora said softly. "No needles, no prods. I only brought stories and food." "Stories are a kind of machine," Aurel replied. "They shape the way days." "Then let's shape this one kindly," Nora answered. They ate again, unhurried. Nora told him about the tiny garden trays the techs kept in the hydro room. Mint that refused to die, tomatoes with skins like sunsets. Aurel spoke of the pulse he could feel in the station's bones, the steady thrum of human engineering, so different from the slow cadence of star wind on an open wing. He described the sound of his people's nests, not just fire, but the breath of many sleeping together, safe. "And now?" Nora asked. "Now the room sleeps alone," he said. There was no blame in it, only a truth laid down between them. Nora did not ask for his grief, but he offered it anyway, made of names and ash. He spoke of a mate called Siren with laughter like hot rain, of fledglings that never opened their eyes to the full sky, of choosing refusal when the officers demanded a war song on command. When he fell quiet, the room seemed to listen. "I can't fix what was taken," Nora said, "but I can refuse a smaller theft. I can refuse to let your last years be a loop of heat and walls." "Last years," Aurel repeated. "The director's clock ticks loud." Nora nodded. "It does, but clocks are not gods." The second session stretched the way good talks do. Whispers moved down the corridor, but Jalen kept the door for them, as if he could bend time with his lean shoulders and a determined jaw. At one point, Aurel's laugh shook into a cough. The air stirred with sparks, then steadied. Nora held out a cloth soaked in cool water. He touched it with the edge of his beak, a formal acceptance of care. "You said today was your birthday," he said. "Did you wish for anything?" "I wished for space," Nora said. "For you to have some." "Then your wish touched my feathers," Aurel replied, and both of them smiled at the small miracle of it. That night bled into morning, while Nora and Jalen wrestled text. They set the cultural safeguard provision beside Nora's credentials, annotated precedence rulings, and prepared filings to the Heritage Council that would ping across official channels like small stones slipped into a giant's pocket. Jalen brewed a drink, so strong their hearts beat a little too fast. "If we push this through," he said, "Kaldwin will be furious." "Kaldwin can be furious on his own time," Nora answered. "We only need him to be lawful on ours." By the third session, the room had learned their names. Aurel entered with less stiffness, the collar still blinking, the tethers still mean, but his eyes brighter. Nora brought a simple instrument from the rec room, a small woodwind patched with tape. She did not play well, but she played true. The notes wavered, uncertain, then found a line. Aurel bowed his head, listening as if the music was a map only he could read. When she finished, he made a sound Nora had not heard. Not laughter, not speech, but an old call that rose and fell like the breath of a sleeping planet. It was soft enough that the guards did not worry, and strong enough that Nora's eyes filled. In that sound lived mornings and the names of bright things. "What do your people sing at the beginning of a journey?" she asked. "We sing a promise to the horizon," he said. "We tell it we are coming gently." When the session ended, Aurel hesitated at the threshold, like someone asked to step into a storm. Nora felt the ache of it down to bone. "I will be back," she said, and kept her voice steady this time. "I swear on every small good thing I know." He lifted one massive foot, then another. The tethers shone, mean as wire. He did not fight. He only made the air heavy with the shape of what he wanted. After the door sealed, Jalen found Nora at the table, both hands flat on the wood as if it kept her upright. "We filed the packet," he said. "Heritage Council receipt stamped an hour. If Kaldwin fights it, he spends months feeding a prisoner he wants to be rid of. If he signs, he is rid of the cost in an hour. And Aurel is in my custody," Nora whispered. The words felt unreal and exactly right. "We need a pilot," Jalen said. "Someone who won't ask for a manifest." "Miri Quos owes me a favor," Nora replied. "I patched a blood tank for her brother on Vesta. She'll come." They spent the rest of the cycle putting wheels under hope. Jalen drew corridor maps with lazy lines that disguised their urgency. Nora gathered the recordings she had already made. Aurel's voice naming winds, the small laugh that threw sparks, the old call to the horizon. When the approval ping arrived, it was almost rude in its bureaucratic blandness. "Transfer authorized. Custodial release to researcher Nora Hale. Effective immediately. Compliance required. Penalties listed, signatures attached. Jalen read it twice, then grinned a grin that made, "Let's go get your Firebird," he said. The heat inside the vault hit Nora like a shove when the doors slid open. Oral looked smaller for a moment, not in size, but in light. Then he saw her face and stood as if gravity loosened its hold. "Is it the next day?" he asked, voice hoarse with hot air and waiting. "It is today," Nora said, tears running without shame. "And today we are leaving." For a second, he did not move. Then he did, carefully, as if stepping into a new skin. The collar blinked, the tethers whined, the guards flanked, but Jalen's orders were clear, the paperwork iron, and the path through the station had been swept clean by quiet friends. They walked together, not fast, not slow, just exactly as steady as the moment allowed. Miri Quos met them at the hangar with her cargo skimmer and a look that said she was too smart to comment. "Load up," she said. "I don't have a crate big enough for Pride, but the hold will take him if he folds tight." Aurel fit himself into metal meant for boxes and made it seem like a cradle. Nora climbed in beside him and rested a hand on warm feathers. The engine hummed awake. Jalen stood at the ramp, one hand on the frame. "Fly safe," he said. "Send me a picture of a sky that doesn't hurt." "Come visit," Nora replied. "I will when the noise dies down," Jalen said, and stepped back as the ramp lifted. As the station shrank in the viewport, Aurel made the old call again, very softly. Nora listened with her whole heart. "What does it mean?" she asked. "It means we have begun," he said. The skimmer's jump left the bad light behind. Kepler 442b unfolded as a quiet relief. Bluegrass that rippled like water, low hills baked warm by clean suns, thin clouds drawn like brushstrokes across a wide canvas. The air tasted mineral and new in Nora's lungs. Aurel stepped down from the hold and shook himself like a creature coming out of long rain. For not fully, not yet, but enough to make the world hold its breath. The research outpost had begun as a single prefab on an overlooked plateau. Within a week, it looked like a place meant for staying. Nora and a small crew strung power lines to geothermal vents, planted sensor rods, and mapped pockets of safe heat. Aurel helped by simply being there, a steady center that made the work make sense. Day by day, the old loops fell away. The collar went first, cut with a borrowed tool and crushed under Aurel's foot with a quiet finality. The tethers followed, unwound like a bad story released from a throat. He tried short glides across the valley and landed laughing, not with sparks, but with the breathless sound of someone arriving at last. They kept a simple routine. Mornings were for calibration and notes, afternoons for stories, evenings for shared meals that smelled of herbs and citrus. Nora recorded everything. The way Aurel modulated heat for comfort, the way his feathers shifted color with emotion, the 17 gentle fires he used for daily life. Each entry felt less like data and more like a way of telling the future that it could be kind. Then came the patrol reports. Jalen's first encrypted ping was concise and not nearly calm enough. Search grid expanding. New routes include your sector in 3 to 5 weeks. I'll stall where I can. Nora stared at the scrolling coordinates until the lines blurred. "They will find us," she told Aurel that evening, standing on a hill where wind made the grass flow around their ankles. Not today, but soon. Aurel lowered his head until they were eye to eye. "We cannot make forever by force," he said, "but we can make today well." "I don't want a handful of good days," Nora said. "I want a lifetime for you and room for your people's tomorrow." "Then we will spend what time we have building both," he said, and spread one wing around her against the breeze. "When the horizon comes, we meet it." The next morning, He led her to a valley she hadn't walked yet, where warm vents breathed in slow rhythm. Aurel had been busy. Stones and branches lay in careful designs, spirals within spirals, lines that met and parted like roads. "These are markers," he said. "They tell anyone who can read that a voice is here, that stories live here." Nora knelt and touched a pattern that looked like waves. "What does this one say?" "It says a singer broke a cage," he replied. "And then it says the singer found another singer with different lungs." Nora smiled and brushed grit from her fingers. "Then here's what I say," she answered. "We encode all of this. We build a library the size of a sky. If a patrol ever burns the grass, the songs will still live on every channel they forgot to lock." They worked faster than fear. Aurel spoke while Nora's recorder drank light. He told a creation myth where stars learned to breathe by watching creatures do it first. He taught her the names of his people's fires: cradle warmth, tea ember, nest mend, fog cut, and the terrible one he did not like to name. He demonstrated each gently, like showing a child the safe edge of a blade. 2 suns rose and fell. On the 3rd morning, Nora's calm chimed with a tone that meant the world just narrowed. "Jalen again. Voice thinner. Retrieval order signed. 48 hours. I'm sorry." Nora's stomach dropped. She looked up at Aurel and saw not fear, but a quiet focusing. "Then we have 48 hours to use," he said. "We have used less to do more." "There must be a way to keep you here," Nora said. The cultural safeguard bought time, not peace. Aurel stood very still. When he spoke, his voice had the resonance of something old. "My people knew of bonds," he said. "Not the kind made of metal, but the kind recognized by custom and law. We could join families across kinds. When such a bond is sung and sealed, even hard rulers step back, because to break it dishonors too many codes." Nora's breath caught. "A bond like that would tie me to you for life." "I have been tied to you since the day you opened your hand," he said. "The question is whether you wish to tie to me." She did not need a list of pros and cons. She needed a yes. And it rose in her like sunrise. "Teach me," she said. The rite was simple. They met in the valley at dusk, where the vents breathed and the stones remembered. Aurel drew a circle with the tip of his wing, not touching the ground, but warming the air until the circle shimmered. Nora cut a lock of hair. Aurel plucked a feather from his own wing with careful pain. Together, they placed both in a small hearth built of river stones. Aurel breathed the gentlest fire until the hair and feather curled and lifted into soft smoke. He spoke first in his mother tongue, words that felt like the shape of mountains. Then he said them again in Federation Standard, so she could be sure. "I offer my warmth to shelter you in cold and fear." Nora answered with the phrases he taught her, each syllable slow and certain. "I offer my hands to steady your wings when storms find us. I offer my strength to bear the days you cannot. I offer my voice to keep your songs remembered. I offer my life to protect your life, not as a shield, but as a way of walking beside. I offer my heart to hear your heart when words fail and when they sing." They spoke together to finish it. In ember and starlight, we step as one. The heat moved through Nora like a friend arriving. She felt not thoughts, but textures. Aurel's relief like warm rain, his joy a bell tone, his steady courage a road beneath her feet. She laughed and cried at once, and the valley held both. "It is done," Aurel said. "Then let it hold," Nora whispered. They were ready when the cruiser came. The ship dropped through cloud in a neat line, soldiers disembarking with boots that tried to make the ground belong to them. Director Caldwin walked at the front, with a face like a locked door. "Researcher Hale," he called across the grass. "This ends today." Nora stepped forward, data slate in hand, bond song in her chest. "It ends with respect," she said. "The cultural safeguard is still active, and now there is more. Oral and I have completed a recognized bond right. Your own ethics code marks bonded pairs as indivisible without High Council review." Oral stood beside her, not looming, only present. "I am Oral Flamecrest," he said, voice calm as warm stone. "Last singer of my old nest, first singer of this new one. This human and I are kin by vow." Caldwin's jaw worked. Soldiers lifted rifles, a fraction. Jalen's last advice rang in Nora's memory. "Stand steady and show them a legal map with no exits." 17 clauses will break if you force this, Nora said, screen held out. "The Heritage Council will ask why you put budget above treaty in a case being watched by a dozen species. Your name will live in footnotes that never forget." For a long breath, nothing moved. Oral did not flex a muscle. Nora did not blink. The wind braided itself through blue grass and waited to see who would learn. Caldwin lowered his hand. "Stand down," he said at last, each word tasting like dust. "Log status as protected cultural site pending review." The soldiers obeyed. The ship rose. The sky smoothed. Nora's knees softened and she would have fallen if Oral had not lifted a wing to catch her. "We did it," she breathed. "We are doing it," Oral answered. "This is only one page." The outpost grew because good things tend to when given air. The prefab gained 2 more rooms, then 5, then a small ring road that circled a geothermal pond where steam rose like quiet thoughts. Scholars arrived in 2s and 3s, invited by encrypted notes or by rumor that moved faster than bureaucracy. They brought listening hearts and careful hands, and they asked first before touching anything that remembered. Nora built the archive the way a person plants trees, for shade she might not live to sit under. Aurel stood with her for most recordings, his voice steady as he relayed tales that were almost lost. Some afternoons, he simply flew. He would leap from the high hill, ride a thermal, and carve a line across the open. Each time he landed, a little more weight fell from both of them. One evening, while Nora mapped a lexicon of fire names, a sound carried across the plateau that made her drop her stylus. It was a harmonic call she had only heard in Oral's soft renditions, but this time it came from the sky itself, bright and many-lined. Oral turned toward it, every feather listening. He answered with a call of his own, old and clear, and the horizon answered back. They arrived in a slow wave, cautious until they saw the stone markers and the gentle veils of heat that spelled welcome. First 3, then 5 more, then 7. Feathers and shades from honey to dusk. Their landing sent harmless sparks through the blue grass. The smallest, a brave slip of gold, sprinted ahead on quick talons and stopped just shy of Oral, trembling with joy. "Uncle," she chirped in rough standard, words learned in hiding. "They said you were gone." "I am here," Oral said, touching his beak to her head, "and you are a miracle." Nora stood back and watched the reweaving of a torn net. She met each new arrival with her palms open and her head bowed in a greeting Oral taught her. The elders looked at her with long, measuring gazes, and then, seeing the bond gentle and visible between her and Aurel, they nodded, as if their breathing had just become easier. The outpost shifted in a week, from a quiet lab to a living school. Mornings filled with songs and flight drills, afternoons with stories and maps, evenings with shared meals that made steam against the cool. Nora found a rhythm teaching human children who came on visiting grants about star thermals and listening in return when the young griffins explained nest geometry and how to braid warm reeds. Someone painted the door of the archive with a crest made of burning lines and rivers. Jalen sent a message on the second month. Case closed in the system. His note read, Subject 77A recorded as integrated under protection. Official hands off. Unofficial curiosity will linger, but you've got more friends. He kept a door propped open when we needed one, RL said. We will keep one for him too. Time moved in bright circles. On the anniversary of their flight, Nora cooked the same meal they shared in the refitted cargo hall. It tasted of rosemary and memory and the kind of home you carry in your hands. They ate in the geothermal valley beside the stone patterns that had begun to stretch like a poem across the floor. The young ones traced lines with their claws and asked simple questions that were wholly in their honesty. Later that year, a council delegation visited without soldiers, carrying clipboards instead of rifles. They toured the archive, listened to RL's lessons, and stood awkwardly while young Griffins showed them how to warm tea without scorching the cup. When they left, they signed 3 new protections and took with them a quiet understanding they had not expected to find. On a windless night, the elders gathered for a rite that had slept too long. They named Nora Bondkin in formal cadence, not as a loophole, but as kin by choice. They extended that kinship to any child she mentored and to any child of those children, not by blood, but by a promise to carry songs. Nora cried and laughed because the moment deserved both. Orel pressed his side to hers and hummed the Horizon song in a softer key. Years braided themselves into garlands. Gray threaded Nora's hair in quiet strands. Orel's flame settled into a steady gold. Less ablaze than a hearth with room for many, the outpost became a map point whispered in ports and classrooms. Come if you want to learn how to make tomorrow kinder. Refugees arrived, so did students. The dining hall learned recipes from 10 worlds. Someone always had a story at the ready when the sun went down. One late evening, a young griffin named Solera, bold and curious, with a habit of interrupting herself with small delighted chirps, asked for the beginning again. Tell us how you met, she said, her eyes bright. Tell us how a window became a door. They told it together, the way they always did. Nora described the first look through the glass and the heat that waved like a bad dream. RL spoke of the quiet in her voice that did not try to own him. They told the shared meal, the 3 days, the long night with Dusty Law, the run through corridors, the first leap into a sky that didn't hurt. They told the bond right in the valley, and the day a ship rose, because words were honored at last. When the telling ended, Solera rested her head on her forelegs and sighed in that content way young beings do when the world makes sense for a while. Around them, the fires in the braziers settled into low coals. The archive door gleamed softly with the crest, as if it had its own memory of warmth. Oral turned to Nora and spoke the words he said every night, not because habit made him, but because gratitude likes to walk the same path again and again to keep it clear. Thank you, he said, simple as water. Nora smiled the way a person does when home is not a place, but a set of hands and a voice she knows from a long way off. For what? She asked, as she always did, a ritual of kindness. For seeing me, Oral said, not a file, not a weapon, not a cost, just me. And thank you, she replied, for letting me. Above them, stars swung slow and easy, like lanterns carried by careful travelers. The young ones drifted towards sleep. The elders spoke in low tones about tomorrow's lessons. Wind braided the grass. The night made a soft room around them that did not take away, only kept. Before they rose to head inside, Nora touched the nearest stone pattern and traced a new line through it, a thin path that curved toward the archive door. "What does that mark say?" Auril asked, amused and curious. "It says that tomorrow knows our names," she replied, "and that we will answer when it calls." Auril hummed agreement, a sound like warm light. "Then let's go meet it," he said. They walked back through the valley with the steady steps of people who no longer hurry because they no longer flee. Behind them, the stones held their shapes, the fires kept their small promises, and the sky, wide and patient, opened another clean page.